Overlord is a series that has a world that is filled with so many interesting aspects and information, but the cast of characters are just as diverse and interesting. Now, because I previously did a general overview for the 7 floor guardians of the Great Tomb of Nazarick, I wanted to do an in-depth breakdown for each of their characters, and I'll be starting with everyone's favorite chair, Shalltear Bloodfallen. And for this video, we'll first take a look at her overall creation, the idea and concept behind it, along with how it affected her character and personality. Also, it goes without saying, there will be spoilers for Shalltear's character and the Overlord series, so here's a spoiler warning just in case. If you enjoyed the video and want more Overlord breakdowns, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel as well, it really helps.
Shalltear, 苦しいか? ならば。全然苦しくありません。それどころかご褒美です。
So who is Shalltear Bloodfallen, the Bloody Valkyrie? Well, she's part of the 7 Floor Guardians, a group of elite and powerful level 100 NPCs that are created by the Supreme Beings to protect the Great Tomb of Nazarick. They all have the highest authority among the NPCs of Nazarick, and each Floor Guardian is responsible for the defense of their own floors. For Shalltear, she is the Floor Guardian of the 1st to 3rd floors of Nazarick, which are called the Catacombs, gigantic subterranean barrier chambers where several dozen undead creatures wander around, and is filled with all manners of traps to hinder intruders. Shalltear's job was to basically be the first line of defense against intruders that managed to overcome the hazards of the 1st to 3rd floors, and because of this, she had the most combat experience as compared to the other Floor Guardians. And because she was always the first to meet any player that invades Nazarick, she was designed to have the highest overall stats among all the Floor Guardians, making her the strongest one if you're not counting Gargantua, the Guardian of the 4th floor. That's why before Nazarick was transported to the New World, Shalltear would often accompany Momoga into battle to serve as his support and personal bodyguard. It was for this reason that he considered Shalltear to be the second NPC in Nazarick that probably understands him the most when it came to combat and had the best teamwork, losing only to Pandora's actor who was his own creation. That said, when Nazarick was transported to the New World, Shalltear along with the other NPCs were given new roles to handle, which I'll talk more about later in the video. Now, the NPCs also gain new personalities based on the flavor text programmed into their character bio by their creators, and even adopted some aspects of their creator's personality as well. For Shalltear, she was created by Pero Ronchino, one of the 41 Supreme Beings, someone who was extremely passionate towards H-games and was known for his perversion. So when he was given the chance to create Shalltear, he took the opportunity to transfer many of his own depraved fetishes and interests into a character background. And it's safe to say that Shalltear was the literal manifestation of eroticism, which was evident in the way her character behaved and how she was designed, basing it off a Victorian-style vampire. Pero Ronchino even gave her a wide selection of clothing, all of which catered to one fetish or another, but unfortunately for us, we never got a chance to see any of them in the anime. Now, the obvious reason for choosing a vampire is because in folklore, they have always been associated with sexuality, like being seen as symbols of forbidden desires and temptations. That's because their ability to seduce and allure their victims represents the darker aspects of human nature such as lust, passion, and the unknown, all of which are traits that Shalltear possesses. The vampire concept is further reinforced with her youthful and childlike image, but it could also be attributed to Pero Ronchino's own interest in the lolicon archetype. Regardless, since vampires are essentially immortal beings, they often retain a youthful appearance. And it's this eternal youthfulness that adds to their allure and attractiveness, tempting victims with the promise of a life beyond normal human limitations. Of course, aside from her overall design and the vampire theme, Pero Ronchino likely programmed her to have every possible fetish she can think of, because after arriving in the New World, Shalltear's personality and the sexual preferences that she has openly showcased are equally depraved. For instance, Shalltear has mainly shown a preference for women, although she isn't opposed to males if she finds one that interests her. Pero Ronchino even created a harem of vampire brides for her to have nightly activities with. This also hints at the fact that she enjoys necrophilia, since vampires are technically undead creatures, and her proclamation of love towards Ainz further reinforces this notion. But that wasn't all. Another prominent core aspect that Pero Ronchino programmed into her character was her interest for sadomasochism. She's essentially a sadist that enjoys using authority and power to torment others in less than humane ways until they become her submissive slaves. She enjoys playing with her victims until they are mentally or physically broken so that she can mold and warp their personality and psychology into obedient servants. We actually saw this during her encounter with Brain Anglaus, where she was simply toying with him while also destroying his confidence until he was finally broken by her, and he was lucky to have escaped because if she managed to capture him, he likely would have suffered a fate worse than death. But then again, a lot of her sadomasochism behavior wasn't really shown in the anime, and even in the light novel there are only implications on it. So to give a better example, let's take a look at the interaction that happened between Ainz and Foresight, the worker group that invaded the Great Tomb of Nazarick. Basically, in the anime, Foresight would all be defeated by Ainz, but Arch, the magic caster of that group, had managed to escape, and the other members begged Ainz to spare her. He agreed to spare their friend, so he ordered Shalltear to find the girl and give her a swift, merciful death. However, in the web novel, this went down very differently because instead of having Arch killed by Shalltear, Ainz actually spared her life, although the term spare is used very loosely here. He basically ordered Shalltear to take care of Arch, but in reality, he didn't really care about the girl. Needless to say, Shalltear had plenty of fun with a new victim, subjecting Arch to various forms of torture and abuse, eventually turning the girl into a personal pet. And I think I'll be demonetized if I talk about the things Shalltear did to Arch in the web novel, so I'll leave a link down below if you're interested in reading a detailed depiction of what actually happened, but remember the storyline that happened in the web novel is no longer canon. In any case, she doesn't only enjoy dishing out punishment and torturing others, it was also somewhat implied that she is a masochist as well, although she only seems to enjoy the act of being abused if it was given by the supreme beings, especially Ainz, but in the anime it was more tame. For instance, when Ainz first gathered the Floor Guardians and exerted his aura, it was enough to make Shalltear wet just from the pressure alone, or the famous Shalltear scene, where she was literally going crazy just from having Ainz sit on her as punishment for failures to complete her first mission outside Nazarick. With that said, Shalltear wasn't a complete degenerate and has been shown to sometimes possess a childlike demeanor and a personality that is quite innocent. Whether this was a deliberate programming by Pero Oncino or something she manifested by herself, that's debatable. We mostly see Shalltear behave in such a manner with the other Floor Guardians, especially Albedo and Aura. Now, when it came to Albedo, Shalltear often enjoyed provoking and fighting with her because of their interest in gaining the affection of Ainz, whereas for Aura, it's a combination of her own personality and something that the creator programmed into her. This is because Aura was an NPC created by Buku Buku Chagama, the older sister of Pero Oncino, and when they were both in the guild, they often fought with one another, which translated over to the NPC creations. That's why Aura and Shalltear's own relationship is a complete mirror image of their creators, in which the two often enjoy provoking and making fun of one another, although Shalltear tends to always be the one that loses in the arguments. But as the series progressed, their relationship really flourished into a somewhat loving sisterly bond, and even though they still occasionally argued, it was evident that they both cared for each other. Aura even paid extra attention on Shalltear and comforted her when she fell into depression because she failed her first mission outside Nazarick while also being briefly mind-controlled and rebelled against Ainz. So regarding the failed mission, when they arrived in the new world, Shalltear was helping Sebas and Solution Epsilon to search for powerful individuals with special abilities. However, during the mission, she encountered the Black Scripture, an elite Black Ops unit belonging to the Slain Theocracy. When she engaged them in battle, one of the members, Lady Kyria, had used the world item Downfall of Castle and Country to take control of her. Luckily for Shalltear, she managed to kill Kyria before the effect was completed, so she was simply left on standby mode. It was honestly Shalltear's own overconfidence and incompetence that caused her to almost become compromised, although she was only partially at fault because she could not have known that world items existed. Also, the fact that she was one of the strongest NPCs in Nazarick and the people in the new world being quite weak, her confidence was somewhat warranted, but still, she could have at least prepared herself for the worst possible outcome when it came to the mission. Nevertheless, Ainz was forced to fight against Shalltear and she really did live up to her status as one of the strongest, being able to match him in battle. However, it was revealed that Ainz was always in control, and it was also unlucky for Shalltear because Ainz was quite possibly the worst supreme being that she had to fight, since he knows her combat capabilities very well and he was always a super meticulous individual, so he was fully prepared for the fight. Ainz eventually defeated Shalltear with his super tier spell Fallen Down and later revived her back in Nazarick using a total of 500 million Yggdrasil gold coins. After Shalltear awakens, she was freed from the mind control and has no recollection of what happened, although later she was informed by Demiurge on what she has done. It was because of this that caused Shalltear to fall into a deep depression. She lost all her confidence and even the trust of the other NPCs within Nazarick. They considered her a liability and incompetent, which was quite evident later in the story, because while the other NPCs like Cocytus, Aura and Mare were busy conquering the nearby areas of Nazarick, and Albedo and Demiurge were busy formulating plans for world domination and running the entire operations of Nazarick, Shalltear wasn't really given anything to handle. Even when she was allowed to participate in operations outside of Nazarick, like during Season 2 when Sebas needed help to rescue Tuareg, Demiurge intentionally gave her an unimportant role while also scrutinizing her. This lack of trust from her fellow Floor Guardians deeply affected her self-esteem, and when Ainz gave her gate-related teleportation duties, it caused her depression to worsen because even though it can be considered an important role, she was essentially just a glorified teleporter, having to stay behind in Nazarick and simply waited for people to contact her so that she can open a spatial gate somewhere. Although Shalltear can be oblivious sometimes, she wasn't so dumb as to not read between the lines on why Ainz gave her this responsibility, but she still earnestly did her job. However, it wasn't that terrible because it was a humbling experience for Shalltear, and she did learn from her mistakes. She learned to be more vigilant and accepting of criticism while also becoming less prone to provocations. She was even given a chance to prove herself when Ainz decided to visit the Dwarf Kingdom. She was brought along to serve as a bodyguard and she was placed under the command of Aura. And you would think that Shalltear's ego would make her quite angry having to take orders from Aura, but surprisingly, she was quite chill about it. She even consulted with Aura about the mission and shared her worry, to which Aura comforted her. Aura also encouraged Shalltear to learn from the mission and that Ainz will be testing her flexibility and adaptability in handling any unforeseen situations. When they reached the Dwarf Kingdom, Shalltear handled her role as Ainz's bodyguard quite well. She even took notes and studied the actions of Ainz, albeit in a very extreme manner. During their investigations around the abandoned Dwarven city, Shalltear was tasked to survey the area, and you can see that she definitely learned from her encounter with the Black Scriptures. She was taking almost every possible scenario into consideration while constantly adapting her approach. She even discovered the Kogawa, and when ordered to take them alive without letting any escape, she coordinated her forces to encircle the enemies and easily capture them. It's definitely obvious how much effort she is putting in to be praised by Ainz, and when she was able to smoothly interrogate the Kogawa from start to finish without any problems, it did praise her effort much to her delight. Now when Ainz helped the dwarves recapture their capital, Shalltear and Aura left to subjugate the Kogawa race around the city while their master handled the Frost Dragons. Shalltear did as she was told and successfully eliminated the majority of the Kogawa population and forced them into submission without even going berserk, showing that she has greatly improved her self-control. Her growth throughout this arc was really well done, and she later expressed her thanks to Ainz for giving her the chance to rectify her previous mistake. She definitely deserved the praise that Ainz gave her later, and it was honestly quite wholesome seeing her reaction. Also because of this experience, Shalltear was able to regain her self-esteem and she finally proved that she was indeed useful to Nazarick. She even earned the renewed appreciation and respect of the other NPCs, especially the Floor Guardians and Sebas. That said, after the successful mission in the Dwarf Kingdom, Shalltear was finally given more responsibilities within Nazarick, like being put in command of the subjugated Frost Dragons. Later, when the dumbass Philip unfortunately caused a political disaster between the Riestus Kingdom and Ainz's Sorcerer Kingdom, Shalltear along with the other Floor Guardians participated in a meeting to determine their strategy for the fall of the Riestus Kingdom. Surprisingly, Shalltear was quite vocal and provided some constructive input, again really showcasing the character growth she experienced throughout the series. But anyways, once they had a plan, Nazarick prepared for the upcoming war, and when it came time to invade, Shalltear was one of the Floor Guardians that were sent out to subjugate the various territories belonging to the Riestus Kingdom. Now unfortunately, Shalltear's endeavours were not shown in the anime, but in the light novel, she managed to impress Ainz with her unique strategies in taking down the various territories. And what she did was basically use the Frost Dragons under her command to perform hit and run tactics while also dropping Soul Eaters in order to terrify the inhabitants and then having them wipe out the masses without ever needing her to personally participate in battle. If this was the old Shalltear, she would have just used her overwhelming strength to take out all the territories without any regards to planning or preparation, but the new Shalltear was behaving like a proper top executive of Nazarick, making full use of her own forces and the resources she had while implementing proper tactics and strategies for the battle. But that wasn't all. Demi-Urge will praise Shalltear for intuition when she managed to deduce Ainz's plans involving the Adamantite rank adventurer Azuf Indra. This was also quite an accomplishment for Shalltear considering that Demi-Urge was one of the smartest NPCs in Nazarick and how he previously viewed her. I think it's safe to say that she has definitely regained the respect of her fellow Floor Guardians. In any case, the Sorcerer Kingdom eventually attacked the main capital of the Riestus Kingdom, but Shalltear didn't really participate in the battle, although she was the one that gathered their main forces and teleported them to the capital. Her role during the siege was to mainly secure the safety of the Eight Fingers and their families. When she finished her mission, she joined her master Ainz along with Demi-Urge to observe the battle between the disguised Pandora's actor and the armor of the Platinum Dragon Lord. After the battle ended, Shalltear even provided some of her personal insight and analysis on the battle, but that was mostly a part for this particular arc. Now during the Half-Elf Godkin arc, when Ainz along with Aura and Mara had visited the Elf country, Shalltear was mostly absent. This was because thanks to her recent accomplishments, she was entrusted with more work and responsibilities inside and outside of Nazarick, so she had to stay behind instead of performing her usual role as the bodyguard of Ainz. But anyways, even though Shalltear was created as an extension of a creator's Peroronchino's desires and fetishes, while also taking in some of his younger sibling energy, it's definitely interesting to see a character arc from an overconfident and somewhat oblivious vampire girl to someone that has become humble yet attentive and intuitive. Also being innocent and disarming on the surface, but is actually hinting at something more sinister and sadistic underneath that demeanor, really fits well with a vampire motif. And I think it's this contrasting character design and personality that makes her such an endearing and compelling character. Shalltear definitely deserves to be everyone's favorite lolly vampire, and that she's probably the best chair in fiction. So yeah, that's the overall character breakdown for Shalltear Bloodfallen, and I personally really enjoy seeing the development of her character as well as her relationship with the other characters. But what about you? What are your thoughts on her? Do you like or dislike Shalltear? Be sure to leave your answers down below. As for her powers and abilities, I'll be leaving that for future videos, so be sure to look forward to that. Also, if you enjoyed the video and want more Overlord breakdowns, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel and hit that notification button to know when part 2 comes out. And let me know what other characters you would like to see me talk about. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay safe everyone.